I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Canine program. Most people know us as, oh, you take adopted kids and attachment issues and canines, right? That's right. And so it really is a core piece of what we do. Some of you have had students with us, you know this. We really feel like we would love to take a lot of credit, which we take some credit, but our canines are really our second therapists on campus. They are amazing therapists. Some of you with dog lovers, why? Why, especially golden retrievers, the burros?
Unconditional love.
Okay, unconditional love. Yeah. So our students who have these, Rob talked about this, is pervasive shame, negative core beliefs, I'm bad, I need to prove it. And then what happens with their dog? The dog doesn't let them push them away. And so it starts to challenge us, holy cow, I'm not consistent, I keep coming back. Is there something about me that's lovable? Yes. And it's really, dogs challenge that. But it's safe because our students often don't hear that message from adults. They often hear it from vulnerable people, though. Elderly or little children. You probably noticed this with some of our population. They're great with kids. They're great with the elderly. They're not good with adults and even other teenagers, but they're really good with animals. Vulnerable populations they're really good with because that removes the fortress around their heart a little bit. They're able to let them in. Very safe and unconditional, as you said, and they really are this metaphoric experience. So let me just give you a few nuts and bolts. So our students come in to Calo, and they enroll immediately in our canine program from day one. What does that mean? Well, they actually start working with our golden retrievers immediately. They take them out for walks, they help them potty, eat, things like that. We usually will have a fistful, at least, of canines who are not adopted. That they're essentially, you could view them in an orphanage or in foster care. And that's a powerful metaphor for our students because some of them have been in those experiences. So they start to immediately identify with these available dogs. So they start to work with them during their canine time, and we've never done this. We've never assigned a student to a dog. People are blown away by that. We don't assign them. We just allow it to happen because it's much more natural, and sure enough, they fall in love with one of these available dogs. It's much quicker with girls. The boys have this little front for a little while. Well, Goldens are weak. I need a pit bull, and I need this. And after a while, though, they can't help it. They end up falling in love with the dog. And what happens is that's a great leverage point to help them engage in human relationships. If all it is a pet, we failed. They can have a pet at home. This needs to be much more than that. This needs to be this experience where they learn to parent. They need to be on the other side. Because the advice and lecturing, as we all know, doesn't work. They need to experience what it's like to be a parent. So we put them on a track to be a foster parent. That means that they have to write a couple of essays. And it's really simple. Why I would provide trust of care, now that you know our model, why I will consistently provide trust of care for my canine. That's all they have to write. Why it's important, why the dog deserves it, because what are they really doing? They're exploring their own worth of why they deserve trust of care and physical care. And if they can just do that with some consistency, they actually and they fall in love with the dog, they actually can have a dog with them. And yet they're so resistant to that because they're convinced this dog might quit on them. But the dog doesn't quit, and so it really pushes them through it helps them break through in these therapeutic ways. Well, then some of our students, and eventually that dog then can be with them throughout the day, integrated in their room, can go with them to school, and it can be this regulating piece throughout their whole day. Now, we all know there's great animal therapy out there. Ron, last night we're talking about equine therapy. There's no doubt how powerful equine therapy is. The only issue with the other animals, dolphins and chimpanzees, they're not very domestic. And a golden retriever is very domestic. You can have that dog with you all the time. And so that's what's great, is that they need that all the time. Many of our students then will not just end up being a foster parent, but they will actually move on and be an adoptive parent. And that becomes an even more powerful experience for those that are appropriate. What does that mean? They actually do a little bit more work, have a little bit more vulnerability. I've adopted 3 kids, and we've essentially taken the paperwork of Ken's adoption and my 3 kids and just turned that into our adoption program for our canines, where they have to get placed with the dog, they have to have a waiting period. And what does that mean? Well, there's a placement period. And I joke with some of the students and staff all the time that those are the worst experiences as an adoptive parent. I know Bob and Liz know this, but you'll actually have workers come to your home and go through your underwear drawer. I need everything. I need to look in all your closets. And like, man, this is very intrusive. We don't do that with our students, but we do require that they have some consistency, that they're stable, that they work on it, and that they have that they write essays, they take their dog on home visits. If they're going to be a parent, they need to go through this experience, right? And it's really great because we're putting them in the roles that their parents were in with them. And what happens? They learn empathy. Holy cow, this is hard. This is actually really hard. We had a therapist who talks about this. There's a girl who she just says, I'm not going to have my dog have any boundaries and discipline because I can't stand it. I can't stand it when my parents did that to me. Well, how long did that last? She actually was more persistent. It's usually an hour. She was more persistent, and she was letting her dog eat rocks and things like that. So anyway, there was this. Finally, her therapist just flipped it upside down and says, you know what? If you're going to let your dog eat rocks, I really think you should let your dog eat sticks and these other things. And this girl is just like, what? And just started really challenging her this way. And for whatever reason, this turned her upside down. Like, wow, actually, that's a good point. I'm actually harming my dog. I never thought about it. This is why. And that's what it took for her. You can give her advice all day long, this girl, Rachel. But she had to be a parent. She had to see what it was like to be pushed to actually set a boundary for her dog, which allowed her to accept her own parent boundary. So there's many of these. My favorite example, I'll tell this quickly, is that I really believe that dogs aren't just great for empathy, which they are, but they are actually cycle breakers. Now, what do I mean by that? Most of you know and have experienced some of the dark sides of life. That's why we do this. We enjoy it, right? But when people are abused, oftentimes they will abuse. Not always. A lot of times they'll run the other way and try to help and stop it. But some people, even at a preconscious level, will actually just are wired to then do that. Well, we had a girl here who was removed from her home at 8 months old. And DCFS was involved in her situation a lot, and they kept coming to the home, and they're trying to work with the parents. But I guess the last straw was they come into the home, and here she is in soiled diapers with a rash, empty bottles, and they finally says, look, this is not working. We have to take this girl. 8 months old. Any memories? She can't remember this stuff. She can't even articulate. She's 8 months old, so she goes into foster care. But because she's so young, there's plenty of parents that want her. So it's a pretty successful placement. She goes into this home, great adoptive parents, but yet they find their way to Calo. Very articulate, very good looking, just cruising along until her canine comes along, because it brings up all of her stuff. And so she's placed with her dog, and everything was fine in the foster care process. But now she's placed for an adoption. And she has no words for this, but she says, she just stopped feeding her dog. And she stopped taking care of it. And it would frustrate her. So she would go to Gina and the staff and say, "What? I don't know why I'm doing this. I need help." And she would just get so frustrated. Well, why would she do that? Yeah, but it's weird because she was 8 months old. So why in the world would she do that to her dog? Is it even a choice? I mean, it was a really great example. She's frustrated with herself. She doesn't want to do this, but it's just this growing pattern in her now. So she wanted to. She didn't want to. She found herself continuing to do this with her dog, and it just opened up doors. It allowed her to be so vulnerable and to get engaged on a deeper level of therapy because of this. And she broke through it. It was very successful. She started taking care of her dog, and she articulated. It's kind of emotional. She said, "I would abuse my own kids if I didn't have my dog." So anyway, I just love that story. So.